For years, John Stewart had contemplated the situation. It clung to his boat for a long time, but why? It was impossible for him to prepare himself for the truth after he had explored countless theories. He stood there confused and empty 3 years after the incident began. Octopuses are known for hiding things, but he never suspected they were hiding anything. In the middle of a winter evening, everything began to unfold. Fisherman John spotted something unusual on the side of his boat in Anchorage, Alaska. He had spotted his boat when he spotted the bright blue blog. Standing in front of it, he was even more confused at what led to this. Fishing was one of John's favorite pastimes. After becoming able to work, he started the career he loved right away. His decision had never been regrettable. The boat he owned, however, was the result of his many years of work for others. It seemed as if he had seen everything. His knowledge of this was limited to what he had heard about in the past. Variety was one of John's specialties. Every day, he ventured into the vast open ocean to catch fish, and his catch depended on the sea to blend. It was a blessing to head out in the summertime. Things weren't so simple in winter. This was when the ocean's true power could be seen, and it was pretty frightening. Would John be able to brave the cruel sea? It didn't matter what the ocean threw at John, he was out there. It was not uncommon for him to begin to pray at times as well. Despite the toughest storms, he had survived. He wondered if he would make it out alive during those times. His perseverance never wavered. It was impossible for him. The fish he brought back to his family was his livelihood. This evening, stormy weather prevailed. Despite the waves' strong pressure, the boat was thrown about by them. It was only the beginning. John and his crew needed to reach land before the storm caused their ship to capsize. Would they be able to make it in time? As he swung his boat around, John called the harbor to inform them of their arrival. Despite not catching much that day, they managed to feed their families that evening. The last thing John wanted was to risk any lives in an effort to get more than he could afford. Before getting off his boat, John waited for his entire crew to leave. Suddenly, he noticed a bright blue sheen on his boat. As the light from the lighthouse hit, a beautiful blue octopus, clung to the bow of John's boat as he walked back to get a closer look. His first sight of this creature was breathtaking. His crew would have missed it by the time they returned. Then he would have known the scene was a majestic one, and John would have liked for the rest of his crew to see it as well. But he never thought that there was more to the situation than met the eye. Even though John thought nothing of it, this octopus was on his boat for a reason, and it would take a long time until he found out what that reason was. Would he be able to make sense of what was going on? During the storm, John thought that the creature might have been scared into submission. Perhaps it tried to escape and ended up on the boat after being chased by something. Its true purpose. However, it was much more complicated. There was a reason it needed protection, but it wasn't the reason John thought it did. Only he could have known. It was shocking to discover that the octopus had been left exactly where John left it the night before. Anyone outside the industry wouldn't be surprised by this. This type of behavior wasn't normal to the fishermen. What was the purpose of keeping the octopus? On the day before, the weather had been much worse. As a result, if that was its purpose, it should have left by now. This wasn't the case. There was a tighter grip on the thing than before. From the looks of it, the fishermen became suspicious at that point. As long as they returned after their mission. They didn't expect it to be there. That night, they returned to find it still there, after putting the boat through everything they could think of. The men looked at it in wonderment. It was then that theories began to emerge. Several crew members believed the octopus may have been sick and was holding onto the boat out of fear. In spite of the fact that John had never heard of such a thing before, it seemed logical to him. He would soon discover that it wasn't true at all. So as soon as the crew awoke the next morning, they approached the octopus to determine whether their suspicions were true. Their knowledge of the species was limited, but they knew the disease would be evident. Their assumptions would be confirmed by some discoloration or bleeding. There were no signs of that on the octopus. However, as a result, the fishermen were even more confused. There, he's teamed up with a new theory after their first was proven false. As a result, the octopus could not defend itself and was injured. When the men got closer, they could see that the beautiful body of the octopus was marred with multiple deep scars. A single problem arose. There were no wounds left to heal. The scars weren't that bad despite being deep and numerous. Because none of them seemed to hinder its movement, the octopus wasn't put in a life-threatening situation. As a result, that theory has also been disproven. The fishermen, however, found themselves in a bind. They were going to do what? In an attempt to understand what was happening, the fishermen racked their brains for a few days. After coming up with a lot of assumptions, they tested their theory repeatedly but got no results. How was it spending its time? The boat clung to it for what reason? How on earth could that be happening? Days went by without answers. The crew kept going out, thinking that the octopus would be gone by the time they returned. But each night it was still there. They were slowly getting used to the octopus, and they never got any answers, so they decided to just go with the flow. The theories came and went. But eventually the crew just stopped trying. It hadn't taken them long to realize that weeks had gone by. New crew members joined after some part-timers left. After the story of the octopus spread, it became the newest attraction at the harbor. They simply welcomed the octopus as part of their daily routine. There was nothing new about it. There was still a mystery surrounding it. The weeks turned into months, and the octopus remained on the boat's bow. It had even earned itself a name over the years. As long as the ship was around, the crew members called it True Blue. This was true to a certain extent. Would it ever leave? The excitement caused by True Blue had all but died down as the months turned into years. All of the captains and crews knew the Raven was home to an octopus. All they heard were riddles and assumptions from the new kids on the block. It was a mystery what it was doing, because no one truly knew. The beautiful blue octopus was all everyone saw. Other than that, there were still questions, however. Captain Raven and the crew that stayed on the Raven still wonder what caused the majestic creature to appear. The answers weren't too far away, as they thought. A famous octopus made John's boat famous, and he often admired it from the pier. His mind was filled with questions as soon as he did. The octopus had still not been released, so he was still trying to figure out how it got there. After all those years, why did it still exist? Do you know if it was a pet before they acquired it? Is that why he held on so tightly? What was the reason for its persistence? In the past, the species didn't hang out in one area for so long unless it was abundantly fed. The octopus did not appear to be eating anything at all, however. There was no sign that it moved from its position. He noticed something as he pondered that. A lot of the color on the octopus had been lost over the years. Rather than the bright blue it once had, it now had a dull gray color. There was more to it than that, however. Are its tentacles. John saw something hidden under the octopus as he examined it. Guarding something, perhaps? A startling sight greeted John the following day when he reached the boat. Hoping there was some kind of mistake, he ran around the dock. In the midst of sadness. His heartbeat was in his throat. It was impossible. Things couldn't come to an end so suddenly after all those years. Nevertheless, his observations were unavoidable. True Blue had disappeared. The crew member would not receive a greeting for the first time in 3 years. There was sadness in the air that day, and everyone felt it. They all wondered what happened to the octopus that had devoured them. The truth, however, was known to John. Octopuses were weakening and looking like they were near the end of their lives. But the octopus didn't leave without answering the captain's questions. There was a clue on the boat's side where the octopus once lived. A total of 160 clues have been found. He was touched by their existence, despite the fact that the rest of the crew had no idea what they were. He would never forget. The last 3 years of True Blue's life, he protected the most precious thing he had ever known. Offspring were being protected by it. Hundreds of sacks lined the side of the boat, once housing all the octopi that had now been released. Blue octopi were responsible for all of it.